Hi folks, my name is Brenton Dickieson and welcome back to another 10-minute book chat. This 10-minute book talk is actually part of our 5-book series where I look at different kinds of books that collect together in my own kind of strange way of putting them together. But this one kind of makes sense. Today's 5-book series is on C.S. Lewis, finding 5 biographies that work from different angles for understanding his life a little bit better. Of course, you should always look at C.S. Lewis's own personal memoir, Surprised by Joy, his letters and things like that. But these are 5 books by people that love reading C.S. Lewis that are great for understanding a bit more about his life. Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit, as I often do in 5-book series explorations. And so this 10-minute talk will also cheat a little bit and be a couple minutes longer. But hopefully this works for those who want to dig into C.S. Lewis's life in a more serious and meaningful way. All right, book number 1 is basically I wanted to create the book from people that knew him. What's the best book for those who knew C.S. Lewis? And many would turn to Roger Lancelyn Green and Walter Hooper's biography called C.S. Lewis, but really the first one out of the gate that was a fullest sense of who Lewis was. But I don't find this terribly readable. There are too many quotes. It's not as literary as Roger Lancelyn Green's great retelling stories are, or his other biographies, and it's not really as solid as Walter Hooper's later biographical work, so I'm choosing instead George Sayers' book, Jack. That's right. So my number 1 book choice is Jack. This is a great, readable, friendly, family-centered version of who C.S. Lewis was. George Sayers was a student of C.S. Lewis's and J.R. Tolkien's, and then a friend, and he became really part of the Inklings in a critical way as the Inklings visited his house. Some of the recordings of Tolkien are actually at George Sayers' house. And so he's a great one to tell us from the inside who C.S. Lewis was and what was important to him, and particularly up into his, not just the early stuff, conversion and his fame as a Christian controversialist, but actually into his relationship with Joy Davidman, their marriage, and then when she passed away. So number 1, George Sayers, a personal memoir that I think is worth reading. Now, number 2 is the baseline book. What's the book that you will go to where you'll get kind of the best information and the most of it, of C.S. Lewis's life, a critical biography, and there aren't many that are actually of that kind of substantial length. This one here it's Alister McGrath's critical biography called Eccentric Genius, Reluctant Prophet. I always kind of forget the title, and I make up words in my head about what it means. Alister McGrath, there's a lot of reasons to like what Alister McGrath's doing. Alister McGrath, like C.S. Lewis, is an Anglo-Irish public intellectual working mostly in Oxbridge, and so that works out really well. Alister McGrath, like C.S. Lewis, is not just a general public intellectual, but one who is speaking for Christian topics and working as an apologist. Alister McGrath gives us a lot of kind of intriguing looks at more detailed things like C.S. Lewis' conversion, and he's part of a group of people who have proposed a new date for that conversion, really kind of digging into his time in the war, which we don't get from many biographies, including Lewis's own biography, and gives us kind of a background that you wouldn't get, particularly if you're not from England. So it's a really kind of helpful book in that sense. There are some issues with it. There are people that have pushed back on it, and maybe take a look at someone like Arends Milde, a Dutch scholar who really kind of takes McGrath and takes some of the issues that he has with the text out. And so you can look at his published works. Still, very readable, very accessible. You can find it anywhere, and I think it's even available on audio for those that need that. All right, number 3 is, controversially, A.N. Wilson's biography of C.S. Lewis. Now, A.N. Wilson is also a controversialist, also a public intellectual, but when he was writing this, he was actually writing from the more skeptical or secular humanist or even atheist side of things, and writing largely as a critic. It's a large, bouncy, very quote-filled kind of biography of Lewis, and it has created a lot of controversy. I mean, he even, I think, republished it as a bit of a fix-up a few years after his initial one. And to be fair, A.N. Wilson's in a different space now. He's returned to faith. He's reread some of C.S. Lewis and come out with a new short book and a new documentary that's worth watching. This, however, has such a weird hot and cold element. A lot of fun to read. I shoved this between the seats of my car, and I would read it when I was waiting for things to happen. I had a pencil shoved in it and made lots of notes. It was a great thing that I read over a year, and so for me it worked really well. It's not terribly accurate, though. An older scholar who's passed away, Catherine Linskog, wrote like a 10-page errata of all the things that Wilson gets right or gets wrong, either in interpretation or in fact. So that's worth doing. He's the one that makes the money off the book, so it's okay for others to push back on that. So still, I'm going to include, for my number 3 book, this controversial biography, something to see Lewis from another angle, probably an angle that we're going to be frustrated with. This is the number 3 biography of C.S. Lewis for all the seasons, the book that gets the blood boiling. All right, number 4, the book is so good that I actually loaned my copy out. In fact, I don't remember who I loaned it to, so if I loaned it to you, can you please return it? That would be great. And it's Alan Jacobs' book, The Narnian. Alan Jacobs is an American public thinker, a conservative writer, and an English teacher, and he really sees himself in dialogue with C.S. Lewis, and so he's a good person as someone who writes about reading and thinking and public thought. Jacobs is a good person to come and do a biographical and literary look at C.S. Lewis. And it really is a great read with lovely writing. He doesn't go just strictly chronological, so it gives us a different flavor than other books by C.S. Lewis, beginning in 1949 at this crucial element where Lewis had kind of a nervous breakdown, landed with exhaustion in hospital, and then a couple months later was writing Narnia. Which changed not only his own career, but the way that we read books, the way that we look at fantasy, the way that we understand children's literature. So Alan Jacobs' The Narnian is such a great bedside read. It is my number 4 book in Lewis for all seasons, Lewis Biographies for all seasons, and it's the bedside reading book, the literary biography of C.S. Lewis. Okay, so that was 4. We did that fairly well. Now I'm coming to number 5, and it's time where we're going to cheat just a little bit. I would normally not include a number of authors from the same perspective in a 5-book series unless we were very focused. In this case, we got four male authors, and so we would naturally think, well, is there someone from the outside? Is there a woman's name that would come in at this point? And this is the struggle. There isn't a major critical biography by a female writer that I know of. There are some attempts and approaches and sections that work really well. For example, Carol and Philip Zaleski, they wrote the book The Fellowship. This is the literary lives of the Inklings, a very readable, fairly hefty kind of volume that gives, in some cases, a more substantial biography of Owen Barfield than we've ever had, and has a good sections on Lewis, and is really kind of less bent than reading, say, Humphrey Carpenter's Inklings book, which really kind of has Tolkien as a certain figure, Lewis as a certain figure, and everybody else as play actors. So that's works, but it's not a full biography. Likewise, a more focused piece by Diane Pavlik-Glyer is the way that she understands the relationship between Lewis and Tolkien and the Inklings when it comes to the way that they build their worlds and write their works. And so her books, The Company They Keep, and the more popular and applicable book for writers and artists is Bandersnatch. Those are good, have great biographical stuff on C.S. Lewis, but again, not critical or full-length biographies. Thinking a little, there are some older women writers on C.S. Lewis in the biographical sense. One is Catherine Linskog, whose master's thesis Lewis saw and thought that she was going in the right direction. However, I just don't see anything. I like her as a writer. I just don't see anything really interesting about this biographical note. It's a bit of a topical reading of C.S. Lewis rather than biography, and it's not terribly in-depth at that. Now, there is one that we can maybe put in if it was just a little bit better for what we're talking about, and that's Anne Arnott's The Secret Country of C.S. Lewis. This is, nice, a lovely little book. It's written for middle graders, for children, in the way that they can read Lewis as they're reading through the Narnia Chronicles. And she does almost structure parts of Lewis's life in compendium with the Chronicles, but she doesn't quite go there. This could have been a much stronger book. It's readable. It's a nice, lovely little book, but it's not one that would really top my list. And likewise, I was actually tempted in this top 5 list to put a terrible one. This is, I think, probably the worst biographical piece on C.S. Lewis I've read, which is William Griffin's the C.S. Lewis Spirituality for Mere Christians. And I mean, there's a lot of really interesting stuff here, but it's just it's just weird. Like, he starts off saying, well, I'm doing a biography, a historical piece. What I'm going to do is look to see what controversy there is in C.S. Lewis's life. Is there some religious doubt he had? Was he, actually gay and didn't tell anybody? But since I couldn't find any of those things, I decided to look at spirituality. Well, that's weird. That's just a strange approach. And that's the reality with William Griffin's book. So it doesn't land in my number 5 spot. The number 5 spot, I decided, will go, in this case, to Devin Brown. Now, Devin Brown's a friend of mine, so you need a warning on that. Not a warning on being Devin's friend, just simply that, I have a little bias on this piece. But I think this is a good, readable book. This is A Life Observed, a Spiritual Biography of C.S. Lewis. Devin Brown is great for writing accessible books, including a kind of a reader's compendium with 3 of the Narnian Chronicles thus far. We'll see how that goes in the future, and has written a number of other biographical or literary critical pieces that are worth reading. He writes lightly, he reads well, he gives lots of examples, and he gives kind of an inviting look at things. And so A Life Observed, I think, works really well for those who are interested in C.S. Lewis's understanding of the spirit and spiritual life. This is a good start. You can press deeper and you can go further, but as a focus study, this one works pretty well. And so it's number 5 on my C.S. Lewis biographies for all seasons. Okay, that's it. I have the list right here, and you can find these books pretty much anywhere. Some you might have to special order. But again, leave your comments below or send me a note on Twitter at Brenton Dana, or you can always find me and up to 1,000 articles on faith, fantasy, and fiction, including a focus on C.S. Lewis, at apilgriminnarnia.com. As always, until later, cheers.